Okay, it says 36 minutes. I don't even know what's going on here. Philip K. Dick once said, and he was a famous science fiction writer, Blade Runner, I can get your memories for your wholesale. I gave a whole blurb, but it was just too long, and I've got to be careful what I say now. I really, really do. Philip K. Dick once said that sometimes the proper response to reality is to just go insane. Who's in charge? Who's going to be in charge of the Justice Department? A sex trafficking pedophile who looks like Eddie Munster. Who's going to be in charge of the Health and Human Services? A man whose half his brain was eaten by an African worm who spent 25 to 30 years as a heroin addict. Brilliant. And who thinks that vaccines cause autism. It's not done. I'm not done yet. Then there's the Fox host that they're putting in charge of the Army. Now, look, I know what you're going to say. He was in the military. He served honorably. And I just don't like his political views. And I don't. They sound a little bit scary. But here's my objection. He served honorably. He was like what, like a sergeant or something? I'm not going to say he was a low-level grunt, but Colin Powell, they're the people that are supposed to be in charge of the world's most powerful army are qualified people that work their way up the ranks. Not some schmuck that served as a weekend. It wasn't even good enough for the weekdays. It was a weekend host. A weekend host on Fox News, Fox and Friends. The inmates, folks, are in charge of the asylum. They are. So I decide, my grandparents are from the Netherlands. Maybe they'll take me back. I've tried this before. It's not going to work. Their economy is completely tanked. Germany is completely collapsing because they used to get their energy from Russia. They were stupid enough to listen to the environmentalists, and they shut down all their nuclear power plants. I was never for that. The only reason the French economy is still stable is they didn't shut down their nuclear power plants. They've got to increase their military budget because NATO is a thing of the past already. And then their biggest trading partner was China, and that's been effed up because America. What can I say? So they don't have gas anymore. They don't have their major trading partner has been cut off, and they've got to increase their military budget. Oh, and the AfD, yeah, Germany's probably the next election is going to be taken over by the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, which is basically, National Socialist Party 2.0, and they're rearming. Oh, that's just great. So maybe I'll go to the Netherlands because that's going to be safe. I turn on the television set and there's a riot in the Netherlands. There are Jewish soccer fans in the canals and being beaten up allegedly, and then you find out that these Maccabee fans had been tearing down Palestinian flags, had been beating up uh, Moroccan taxi drivers, that this wasn't so much a pogrom as it was mutual combat between two warring tribes. And who started it? I don't know. But there's basically martial law in Amsterdam. I don't think that a fat American screaming that he's afraid Donald Trump is going to put him in a camp is going to impress him too much. And then there's this guy, Gert Wilders, who probably he's going to send all the Arabs back home like we're going to send all the Mexicans back home. He'll probably take one look at me and say, yeah, Don, hey, meine Freund. Remember me? It's Gert. Yeah, I got this fat clown here. He's asking for a political asylum. He wants someone to hide him in an attic. Does he anybody important or is he just a nut? Because we can throw him in a canal for you. There's no place to hide, folks. And the world is crazier than I am. Look at the world. Look at it. Look. Take a good, long, ugly look at the world. And I'm just going to say this. You want to blame the voters that they're all the black men that voted for Trump are racists and that the Hispanics, men and women who voted for Trump, are somehow also horrible racists. Every name in the book at every group that decided uh, to vote for Trump. It's all their fault. They should have listened to you. And it's tempting because I was thinking this. I was very angry too. Listen to these words because it's very important. What did we do wrong that we alienated so many people that they felt that their preferable choice was to vote for a rapist who tried to overthrow the government, a tax cheat, a terrible businessman who's declared bankruptcy like 6 times, basically the world's greatest flim flam man who's coated in Cheeto dust. He was everybody's choice. And you want to blame that, oh, they just are wonderful. We were so wonderful. The economy wasn't that bad. Inflation was down to 2.4%. Growth was running about 3%, which is strong. The unemployment rate's about 4 to 4.2%, depending on what month you look at. But perception's 90% of this, and people weren't feeling it. You had working class people that couldn't pay their bills, they couldn't pay their automobile insurance, they couldn't pay for their groceries, they couldn't pay their mortgage or their rent, and they're angry. They're getting lectured about transphobia, about their 8-year-old daughter is really a boy, their 9-year-old boy is really a girl. Nobody really did anything about the border till the last minute, and we're getting lectured that we're all racist. I mean, we're all immigrants, but most of us came here legally, or our family did. Most of us. But still, we got to listen to that lecture. Crime is actually down, but again, perception. People see these cases of illegal immigrants raping and killing women, kidnapping little kids, just a crime wave. I don't know what about these Venezuelan gangs. The perception is that we're just letting in criminals and drug addicts. Alexa, stop. God almighty. Why does she just start up like that? I probably unleashed some algorithm. Why does my skin itch? I'm just so nervous. Everything itches. Do they have medication for this? Oh, what was that song? Give Me Something for the Pain. Who did that? Was that Bon Jovi? Alexa, play Give Me Something for the Pain.
Give me something good to eat by Super Simple Songs on Amazon Music.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, play Something for the Pain by Bon Jovi.
Something for the Pain by Bon Jovi on Amazon Music.
Oh, it is a song. Sometimes I think I've just made something, confabulated something, but unless this is a hallucination, there actually was a song. Alexa, increase volume. Alexa, when was this song written?
Something for the Pain by Bon Jovi was released on June 1st, 1995.
Alexa, stop. Anyways, I'm just probably repeating stuff that I heard Bernie Sanders say. You, because I'm not a Democrat anymore. You lost because you alienated the American working class. You lectured them about all this identity politics and how they were privileged and racist and stupid and living in trailer parks and they should have gone to college. You look down their nose at people that are just trying to make a living, and then you expect them to vote for you? I mean, Joe Biden went out and did that union thing. I'm really glad about that. But I think people just saw that as window dressing. They really didn't see that as doing anything to help them. You got to go back. I think the Democratic Party has to go back to meat and potatoes issues. And it's trying to appeal to its new constituency, which is a loser. It's people that live in college educated people that live in the suburbs who are affluent, who are like elitist liberals who actually care about these, The emperor has no clothes, folks. These stupid identity politics issues, which are divisive and which are, look what, I mean, just going to say it. It's going to make me sound like a conservative, but just look at, I try to be scientific and look at the results. They defunded the police in some of these cities. These cities are now ghost towns. They're filled with homeless, drug-addicted zombies and these masses of gangs looting stores. They're just, you go to San Francisco or LA and it's just em- empty, empty storefronts. They fled. So there's your defund the police. It's just walking drug addicted zombies pooping in the street. Oh, and then there's the border. Oh, that border um, policy probably would have been good, but I think people interpreted that as too little, too late. So, and yeah, Trump played politics with it. I'm not trying to defend the Republicans. I'm really not. They're horrible. I voted for Kamala. I liked her. I thought she would have made a good president. I held my nose about some of the policies, but I thought I voted for Kamala. I didn't vote against Trump. But obviously, most America. Maybe I'm too close to the elitist suburban liberal mindset. Working class people weren't feeling it, and they were angry. They felt betrayed and vilified, and they just had enough. They just had enough. And then there's this transgender thing. Look, if you want to be, if you are gay, it's not like you choose to be gay. You are gay, and you want to get married. That's fine. I have no problem with gay people. I have no problem with transgender people. But for the love of God, leave kids alone. I don't understand why they have to have drag queen hour in libraries. What the hell is with that? I don't understand why and I think it is political. There are people that have turned this whole transgender issue. There are people that are legitimately intersex, but it's become a fad, turning little boys into little girls, shooting little kids full of hormones, sterilizing them, removing their genitals. This is Dr. Joseph Mengele shit. Did you and you expect any working class person with any common sense to go along with this crap? I mean, I'm sure this is a very popular fad in college universities. I was watching a documentary one time about why very intelligent people fall for very stupid things, and it's not because they're stupid. It's because they're smart in the wrong way. Intelligent people are capable of rationalizing things and convoluting logic, where a dumber person like me isn't. And they have to depend on their guts and their common sense. Sometimes that common sense and gut feeling kept us alive for 500,000 years. Now that society's advancing, we live in urban areas. We're like the global economy. It's not just tribalism is what holds us together. There are two things. There's individualism is a relatively new idea. The idea that individuals had rights was something that came about since the Enlightenment. Before that, there was no such concept as an individual right. The serfs had rights. If you were a baron, you had right. If you were the king, you had certain rights. The word right meant privilege, of course. And the idea that an individual had rights is a relatively new concept. And the other new concept is the idea that you should feel empathy for anybody outside of your ethnicity or your tribal unit. We survived in small bands of hunter-gatherers, and they had to work together, but anybody in the other tribe was seen as an enemy. If you've ever seen that scene from 2001 Space Odyssey, where the two monkey tribes are beating each other with bones and rocks. Well, one tribe is just, the monolith teaches him, pick up a bone. That's progress, I guess. We've been at it for 500,000 years. One tribe of monkeys beating the other tribe of monkeys. It's been a long time since we've been at that. And society is just taking its first steps to move beyond that. And it's like the first steps towards democracy. Simon de Montfort's Parliament. Another example, for thousands of years, man dreamed of flying. and was laughed at because it seemed like a pretty stupid idea. How could anybody fly? Leonardo da Vinci came up with an idea for an air screw. It was a primitive idea for a helicopter, and it was a brilliant, brilliant idea. But of course, it didn't work. Kind of like Karl Marx and socialism. Of course, the idea for a helicopter in 1500 didn't result in millions of deaths. People would try and fall off a cliff, so maybe dozens of deaths. Finally, in 1942, Igor Sikorsky made I mean, the Germans had one too, but it was just a toy. Igor Sikorsky made a practical helicopter that could be used for military utility. He is a Ukrainian immigrant to the United States. Immigrant coming to the United States, like that Italian guy that invented macchiato or whatever. Did he invent the latte? I don't know. Some Italian dude invented the telephone and then didn't have enough money to renew his patent, and I guess it was stolen by some Canadian named Thomas Edison. But we had all these immigrants coming over. I don't know if did Marconi ever move to the United States? He was a baron in Italy. Marconi invented the radio, I think. He was another smart Italian fellow. But immigrants coming from all over the world, not just Northern Europe or Anglo-Saxon countries, all over the world. George Washington Carver, the inventor of the peanut, although I think he was a slave. These are the people that made America great. And after 450 years, he made a practical helicopter. Now, socialism, the idea, or this idea that there should be universal rights, the idea that people are equal. Now, what does equality mean? Equality of opportunity, or equality of result? Again, people say socialism is an idea that is very impractical and very dangerous and will never work. Maybe that's right. Or maybe it's just like Leonardo da Vinci's helicopter, Simon de Montfort's Parliament. It's just an idea that came way too soon. There are things that are very, very beneficial about capitalism. You're hardworking, you've got a business, you come up with an idea, you get rich. But there are also negative things. There are people in third world countries that are being exploited for their labor and for resources that are not winners in this process. The Great Depression, there were people that lived in Hoovervilles. The Gilded Age, under people like J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller. Some Danish journalist came over and wrote a book called, look that up, How the Other Half Lived. And then we had 1932 to 1980. We had almost 50 years of Keynesian economics. And for most of that 50 years, the United States did amazingly well. From the end of World War II to, say, 1970, 1975. By 1975, we had the energy crisis. The British, not the British, but the French had 1945 to 1975, 30 glorious years. This was Keynesian economics, and it was a little more equitable than what we have now. The United States and Switzerland are the societies with the highest average net worth. Average net worth is you take the in total value of a nation and you divide it by its population. The problem with that is that in places like Switzerland and the United States, you have, say, 10% of the population that owns like 75% of everything. So it's a very misleading number. The average, when I say average, I mean the mean. Normal Americans aren't worth $500,000 each. That's not the average, the real average. If you look at like average middle class people, their net worth is about $110,000 because a lot of people have a lot of debt, and that's what they call median. It's difference between the mean and the median. The median net worth of an American is about $110,000. The median net worth of the average Frenchman is about $140,000. The median net worth of the average Belgian is about $250,000. The median net worth of the average Australian is about $250,000. I think in Iceland it's about $300,000 if you count Iceland as a country. Luxembourg is also similar. The median net worth is Alexa, what's the population of Australia?
In 2024, the population of Australia is 26.7 million people.
Yeah, that's because they privatized their social security system. This was done 50 years ago by a labor government. Labor's like our Democratic Party, only more left wing. Because even back in 1975, the Australian social security system was already going bankrupt and wasn't really producing enough money for elderly Australians to live on. What they did is they preserved a state system, a means tested state system for people that had no resources, kind of like our SSI system for disabled people. Maybe you haven't paid into it, and it's not based on how much you paid in, but it's just a bare bones thing. Everybody was required to put their money in some approved private insurance, usually pension programs with their unions, because Australia to this day is heavily unionized. Like a 401k that's approved by the government. What they find is by the time people are 65 in Australia, there are problems with the system. People feel that they're being cheated by their stockbrokers. But technically, on paper, by the time they retire, the average Australian is a millionaire. Because they've paid they're required, it's called superannuation or something like that. They're required to pay a lot of money into private pension funds. And so by the time they're retired, they're worth a lot of money. But something about they can sell it all off or spend it off when they're 55. And then some people decide that once they've spent all the money that they saved, they go on the social security system once they've spent, which is like the most idiotic thing you've ever heard of, because in the end you're cheating yourself and the system. But these are minor problems. They're Sweden has a partially privatized social security system. When they started to privatize it in the 90s, only about 10 to 15% of the people, I think social security is like 7.5% tax. You can take 2.5% of that and invest it in private funds. Only about 10 to 15% of the population actually take advantage of that option. But the ones that do, say the people that pay into the state system when they retire, they're retiring with like say $1,500 average Social Security benefit. But the ones that put some of that money into private investment funds, they don't want the system to be too risky. Sometimes these funds don't work out, but 9 times out of 10, the people that do the private investing end up making, instead of $1,500, 1,500 euros a month, maybe say 1,800. Alexa, what percentage of 15 is 18?
18 is 120% of 15.
So they make 25% more, in benefit because they were able to take a risk. And that's, I guess, how capitalism works. Anyways, back to my point, which is, again, very attenuated. You've got countries like the United States and Singapore and Switzerland, where you have a very, very, very small, like 5% of the population owns everything. And then you have places like, say, Australia or Belgium or some more social democratic, or France, where the countries aren't quite as rich on average, but the mean is higher. The wealth is more equitably distributed. So you actually, not everybody is equally poor, but you actually have a middle class that is worth something. Now, I'm not talking about socialism, but if we can tweak capitalism to make it a little more equitable, that would be great. So that I think when they call Democrats socialist, it's a misnomer, because it was the Australian Labor Party that. God, my closet's a mess. Oh, look, I've got. My vacuum cleaner. It's hard for me to bend over because of my hernia, so I just use this thing. Look at that. There's dust there. I haven't been dust. But see, I'm doing it now. Oh. Now, I'm not saying they should privatize Social Security, unless I wouldn't trust the Republicans to do that. But there are societies that have, and it's worked out quite well. There has to be a more equitable distribution of wealth, and that doesn't necessarily mean the government coming in and owning everything and just saying you get this and you get that. That's state socialism, and that usually ends up a very inefficient system, which makes everybody equally poor. Distributionism is when a society provides opportunities for people to small business, like these mandatory pension funds. I think they have them in the Netherlands too. But in some societies, like Norway, I think is another one. People own their own homes, and that's a big asset. There are ways of making capitalism more equitable without too much government intervention. But these societies that have more equitable distribution of wealth, they usually have heavy progressive income taxes and a welfare state. That is not necessarily socialism. If the Democratic Party would discuss these issues about how to make life better for the average middle class and working class person, as opposed to ranting and raving and going on a tangent about identity politics, which is something that's not going to benefit the average person who's trying to pay their utility bills or their mortgage or their rent or their medical insurance or their automobile insurance. The Democratic Party has got to do some soul searching and find a way to appeal to the working class instead of screaming and yelling at them that they're racist, homophobes, and that they elected a fascist. What did we have, instead of saying, what did you, the voters, do wrong? It's like Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. Someone did a study and found that a lot of people voted for her, but up ballot, a lot of people in her constituencies also voted for Trump. And she said to them, look, I just want to talk to you and very respectfully ask you why you did this. I think the Democratic Party needs to know what we did wrong, and we want to listen to you. She didn't say, you're a racist. How dare you vote for Donald Trump? You're a vicious, bigoted moron, and you get what you deserve. You might feel that way. I might feel that way. We might be very angry and consider people very stupid. And when you look at what's coming, it's very tempting just to throw up your hands. But we have to also say, what did we do wrong? That people felt that the preferable option was this flim-fan man, this sexual deviant that raped teenage girls with Jeffrey Epstein, who is now appointed a sex trafficker in charge of the Department of Justice, a man whose half his brain was eaten in Africa by a worm in charge of Health and Human Services, and a Fox weekend, not even a weekday host, a weekend host to be in charge of the Department of Defense. He's not stupid. He's doing this on purpose. They're trying to dismantle government, and this is going to hurt everybody. If you have a business, if you're wealthy, and the government can't function properly, society is going to devolve into chaos. You don't want to live through a civil war. This will benefit no one. But the Democratic Party just can't, or Democrats just can't throw their hands up and say, well, it's your fault. You were stupid. You voted for Trump. We let the voters down. They felt they had no choice. They wanted lower taxes. They wanted cheaper stuff. They wanted their mortgage they wanted a house that they could afford. They wanted to be able to pay their food bills and their utility bills. And this man said he was going to make their lives easier. They looked back between 2016 and 2020 and they said, yeah, our life was easier. Well, and we didn't do a good enough job of explaining the damage that COVID did and that Trump's handling of COVID did to the economy and how well the economy rebounded under Biden, which it did. 3% growth is phenomenal. The fact that inflation's down to 2.4% is also amazing. Unemployment at 4.1%. And crime is actually, since the height of COVID, has actually dropped in many places. We did a terrible job of pointing those things out, and I we just dropped the ball. We really, really did. So instead of yelling and screaming at the guy with the MAGA hat, maybe ask him why, and if there's anything the Democrats could have done to get their votes, because a lot of these people aren't wealthy. These are the people that used to vote Democrat, and we abandoned them. We humiliated and insulted them. Well, why didn't you go to college? Why didn't you retrain? Those factory jobs are gone forever. Um, can we really have a society without an industrial base? I think the Democratic Party needs to do a lot of soul searching, and we've got to be a little bit more humble and stop blaming people that voted for Trump and find out what we did wrong, what we could do better. Because obviously Trump is a terrible president, and God only knows what's going to happen. A Fox News host in charge of the Department of Defense, a sex trafficker in charge of the Department of Justice, and a man whose half his brain was eaten by a worm in Africa is now in charge of Health and Human Services. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And that's who people voted for. Either people are incredibly stupid or we did an incredibly horrible job of making our case. And maybe instead of pointing fingers at others, we should look in the mirror.